Before 1973, abortion in the United States was mostly illegal. Nearly every state prohibited it except in cases where the mother's life was in danger. In practice, this meant thousands of women each year resorted to unsafe and illegal procedures. These so-called back alley abortions were often performed in secret under dangerous conditions and resulted in numerous injuries and deaths. The women who underwent them were not criminals or outcasts. They were mothers, daughters, students, housewives. Some were raped. Others were simply not ready. But the law did not care, and society, by and large, remained silent. In the 1960s, a cultural shift began. America was in the middle of massive social upheaval. The civil rights movement, the feminist movement, the sexual revolution, all collided to challenge traditional norms. Among these demands was a growing insistence that women should have control over their own bodies. Reproductive rights, including access to birth control and abortion, became central issues. The right to choose was not yet a legal right, but had become a moral and political rallying cry for millions. Into this landscape walked a woman named Norma McCorvey. She was 22 years old, living in Texas and pregnant for the third time. She had already given up 2 children for adoption. Poor and unemployed, she didn't want to carry another pregnancy to term. But Texas law, like the laws of most states at the time, made abortion illegal unless it was necessary to save the woman's life. Desperate and without options, she became the anonymous plaintiff in a lawsuit that would change history. In court documents, she was known as Jane Roe. Her case was filed against Henry Wade, the Dallas County District Attorney responsible for enforcing Texas abortion laws. The case became known as Roe v. Wade. It wasn't just about Norma McCorvey. It was about whether the Constitution protected a woman's right to choose an abortion and whether the government had the power to deny it. The lawyers for Jane Roe argued that the right to privacy under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment extended to a woman's decision to have an abortion. They claimed the state's interference with that decision was unconstitutional. On the other side, Henry Wade's team defended the Texas law, arguing that the state had a compelling interest in protecting the life of the unborn. The case slowly climbed to the legal system, eventually reaching the United States Supreme Court. Oral arguments were heard twice, first in 1971 and again in 1972, due to changes in the makeup of the court. On January 22, 1973, the court delivered its historic decision. In a 7-2 ruling, the Supreme Court sided with Roe. The majority opinion, written by Justice Harry Blackmun, declared that the Constitution did indeed protect a woman's right to choose an abortion. The court ruled that the right to privacy, though not explicitly stated in the Constitution, was broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether or not to terminate her pregnancy. However, the court did not declare unlimited abortion rights. Instead, it created a framework based on the 3 trimesters of pregnancy. During the first trimester, the decision to have an abortion was left entirely to the woman and her doctor. In the second trimester, states could regulate abortion procedures in ways reasonably related to maternal health. In the third trimester, once the fetus reached a point of viability, states could prohibit abortions, except when necessary to protect the life or health of the mother. This framework attempted to balance a woman's right to privacy with the state's interest in protecting potential life. For many Americans, this was a groundbreaking victory. Women could now seek legal abortions without fear of prosecution or injury. Clinics opened, access expanded. The ruling was celebrated as a major step toward gender equality. But not everyone celebrated. In fact, for millions of Americans, Roe v. Wade was seen as a tragic moral failure, a legal endorsement of what they considered to be the murder of unborn children. Religious groups, particularly conservative Christians, mobilized. They formed coalitions. They built political power. And they began a decades-long mission to overturn Roe. This backlash helped shape the future of American politics. The Republican Party increasingly embraced the anti-abortion cause, tying it to broader conservative values. The issue became a key litmus test for judicial nominees. The phrase pro-life entered the political lexicon, and with it came a powerful voting bloc that influenced elections at every level. In the decades that followed, Roe v. Wade faced constant legal and political challenges. States passed hundreds of laws aimed at restricting access to abortion, waiting periods, parental consent laws, mandatory ultrasounds, clinic regulations, and more. While many of these laws were struck down in court, others survived. Abortion access became a patchwork, varying widely depending on where a woman lived. Despite the opposition, Roe remained the law of the land. The Supreme Court, even with conservative justices, generally upheld its core principles. Cases like Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992 reaffirmed the basic right to an abortion, while allowing for more state regulation. In Casey, the court rejected the trimester framework from Roe and replaced it with the undue burden standard. This meant states could not place significant obstacles in the path of a woman seeking an abortion before fetal viability. Still, the political war raged on. Anti-abortion activists lobbied legislators, protested clinics, and pushed for judicial appointments that could tilt the balance. Pro-choice advocates fought back, defending clinics, expanding access, and organizing grassroots campaigns. The issue was no longer just about law. It was about identity, belief, and the very meaning of freedom in America. Then in 2018, a new challenge emerged. Mississippi passed a law banning abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, well before fetal viability. The law was a direct challenge to Roe and Casey, and it was immediately met with lawsuits. The case that resulted was Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. By the time the Dobbs case reached the Supreme Court, the judicial landscape had shifted dramatically. 3 conservative justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, had been appointed by President Donald Trump. With their confirmations, the court now had a solid conservative majority. In December 2021, the court heard oral arguments in the Dobbs case. Supporters of abortion rights feared the worst. Opponents of abortion sensed victory. The key question was no longer about 15 weeks. It was about whether Roe v. Wade would survive it all. On June 24, 2022, the court issued its decision. In a 6-3 ruling, the court upheld Mississippi's law. But in doing so, the majority went even further. They overturned Roe v. Wade entirely. The majority opinion, written by Justice Samuel Alito, declared that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe, the court said, was egregiously wrong from the start. The authority to regulate abortion, the court ruled, must return to the states. The reaction was immediate and intense. In red states, trigger laws went into effect, instantly banning most abortions. In blue states, laws were passed to protect and expand abortion rights. Clinics shut down in some regions and expanded in others. Protesters filled the streets. Some cheered, others wept. The United States became a nation divided not just by opinion, but by geography. In some places, abortion remained accessible. In others, it became almost impossible. Women now had to travel hundreds of miles, cross state lines, and face legal risks to obtain basic reproductive care. The reversal of Roe was a seismic event. For those who had fought for decades to overturn it, it was a triumph of perseverance. For others, it was a betrayal of progress and a devastating blow to women's rights. And for many Americans, especially the young, the poor, and the marginalized, it introduced a new era of uncertainty and fear. Yet the story does not end here. The battle over abortion continues. At the federal level, lawmakers debate national bans and protections. In the courts, New challenges are filed. At the state level, voters weigh in through referendums and elections. The future of abortion rights in America remains an open question. Roe v. Wade was more than a court case. It was a symbol of freedom, of control, of autonomy. Its rise and fall reflect the changing tides of American culture and politics. It exposed deep divisions in values, in faith, in law. It shaped the lives of millions, and its legacy will continue to shape them for generations to come.